everybody. Welcome back to Sandy's house, where ingredients and taste meet. Today, we will be making a soft and tender, savory scone with bacon, cheese, green onions. It's going to be delicious. Let's get started. Okay, so we have our mise en place all set up. Last week in our last video, we learned that mise en place means to put in place, gathering all of your ingredients before you start cooking, getting everything all measured out. Included in your mise en place is reading the recipe all the way through so that you don't have any surprises midway and then it throws off what you are doing. So we have a half a cup of bacon that we're going to use in the scone. We have 3 tablespoons of green onions. You can also switch that out for chives. You can switch the bacon out for ham if you choose, or even turkey bacon to make it a little more healthy. We have a cup of mozzarella cheese and 1/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. You can use whatever cheese you want. You can use cheddar. You can make this your own. Switch out all of these ingredients for other savory ingredients if you want to. We've got 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of sugar. We've got 3/4 teaspoons of garlic powder. We've got 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we've got some garnishes here. We're going to add some sea salt to it at the top after it's all baked off. I also have, so scones can be savory and they can be sweet. A lot of people are more familiar with sweet scones than the savory ones. So I have some banana scones chilling in the freezer. We're going to bake those off just so that you can see what it looks like. But for now, we're going to work on our savory scone. We have 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, which is also, if you like to bake in grams, which is actually more precise than baking in cups. So if you know how to use your scale and you want to bake in grams, this is 300 grams of all-purpose flour. We have 1 tablespoon of sugar, which is 50 grams, because this is going to be a savory scone, not a sweet one. We've got 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and we've got 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 teaspoon of granulated garlic. And so we're going to mix this all together because you don't want to get a mouthful of salt or baking powder. That wouldn't be good at all. So we're going to mix this all together. Now, we need butter for this recipe. We also need 1 egg, and we need 3/4 cup of, we're going to use 1/2 cup, of buttermilk. But those items are still in the refrigerator. You want to keep them as cold as possible because the magic happens in the oven when the hot air hits all of the cold ingredients. It expands, right? So we're going to grab our butter and get that all chopped in. Okay, so we have our butter, and as you can see, I've cubed it up because you want to break your butter up in the flour. You want little pea sizes. You don't want it too small because you don't want it, to interfere with the action that's going to happen when it gets in the oven. So you want them small, but not really small, which is why it's not a great idea to do this in a food processor, because sometimes we can go overboard and we get the butter too small and we don't achieve the result that we really want. So I'm going to get this all separated here into little bitty pea sizes, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, we got all of our butter in here. Now, I'm using European butter. So when you hear people say butter makes it better, European butter makes it better because it has less water. Regular butter has about 15 to 20% water. European butter has less water and more fat. So more fat equals flavor. So European butter makes it better. And that's what we're using for our scones. And if you're baking, if you want the best flavor out of your pastries or whatever it is you're making, try using some European butter. You'll see the difference. And it's best to cut in your butter before you add your inclusions. Things like bacon, green onions, if you're making a sweet scone, bananas, raisins, berries, those things are called inclusions. And you always want to add your inclusions at the end. That's at least what I was taught in my baking and culinary program. So that's what I do. I add them at the end. So after we get our butter in little pea sizes, we're going to start adding our inclusions, which would be the bacon. I'm going to add our bacon in here. And we're going to add our green onions in here. This is going to be so good. I can smell it already. And then we're going to add all of our cheese. Keep things nice and tidy over here. I'm going to get this all distributed so that each scone is filled with some bacon, some cheese, some green onions. Okay, and then next we're going to grab our buttermilk and our egg and get that all combined. Get that in here with everything else. And we are actually almost done with this recipe. This recipe is so quick. If you're having company or you're having some surprise guests that you weren't expecting and you want to whip up something that makes them think you've been slaving in the kitchen all day, hey, you can whip up a batch of scones in no time. This is also a great recipe for kids. If you like baking with your kids or you want to introduce them to it, this is great. There are no tools that are unsafe for them. And this is great and fun. Let's grab our buttermilk and our eggs. Okay, we've got our buttermilk. I'm going to put it in this bowl because we want to whip the buttermilk and the egg together. This is why it's so important to read and understand your recipe before you start cooking. Because if not, you might just add these in each individually. And you want to combine them to avoid overworking your dough. If you were to add the egg in, you'd have to incorporate that. And then if you were to add your buttermilk in, then you'd have to incorporate that, which means that you're working the dough too much and it's going to produce gluten. And anytime you produce gluten or increase the gluten in your product, you're going to yield a dense, tough product. And we don't want that. We want a nice, soft, moist scone. So that's why I'm adding them together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pour in the liquid in our dry ingredients here and get that all incorporated. It's going to be a little shaggy, but it should come together. You want it to come together nicely. You might have a few pieces of, or some flour that didn't get incorporated, but not a lot. Okay, so you just kind of want to fold it in. You don't want to stir, because again, we don't want to overwork the dough. And that's probably the one thing that people do without realizing it. And may not understand why their product isn't as moist and as soft and as delicate as they would like for it to be, because they're overworking their dough. Okay. I got it about where I want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my seal pad here. So whatever surface you have to pour your dough out on, you want to add a little bit of flour to keep it from sticking. And you want to add a little bit of flour on your hands too. And I'm just going to pour my dough out onto, and you see it's kind of a shaggy mess, which is okay because it's going to come together. It is going to come together. So I'm not going to knead it like I would if I was making rolls or cinnamon rolls or Parker House rolls or something like that. I just want it to come together in the shape of a disc. So I'm just going to pat this down until it comes together because I want to cut it into at least 8 pieces. Might be able to get more depending on how big my cuts are. Now these are American scones. There are English scones and there are American scones. What makes them different is English scones don't have eggs. This scone, American scones, have an egg. I actually prefer American because I like for my scones to be soft and moist. I don't like brittle, crumbly, dry. Not saying that all English scones are like that, but I've had some and it's not my favorite. English scones are usually round like a biscuit, and American scones are more triangular, which is what we are going to do. Okay, let me get my sheet pan. We'll get these all cut up. We're going to put these in the freezer for about 15 to 20 minutes because we want this to get really, really cold before we put it in the hot oven. Because remember, the colder it is, the better. That's where the magic happens. The hot air in the oven hits the water and the butter and creates steam, pushes up those layers in your pastry, and that's what gives it the rise and causes it to expand. Okay, that looks pretty good. What do you think? That looks like a pretty good disc to me. Cut this down a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, I've cleaned my station. Safety and sanitation is step 1 of cooking. Making sure that the food is safe, you are safe, those who are in the kitchen with you are safe. So cleaning as you go is crucial. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have my bench cutter. This is called a bench cutter. I'm going to put some flour on my bench cutter so that it doesn't stick. I'm going to cut this in half. Okay, and I'm going to cut triangular pieces out. I'm going to try to get at least 8. And you want to be gentle because you want these to stay together as much as possible. You don't want them to fall apart on you. We're going to put them in the freezer for about 15 minutes so they can set before we put them in the oven. While they're in the freezer, you can preheat your oven to 400 degrees. They start falling apart on you, you just pat it back together. So here's our first piece. We're going to lay this on our sheet pan. I have a Silpat, but you can use parchment paper. Okay, we got our scones out of the freezer. Earlier, I made up a batch of banana scones. I'm gonna bake those off as well so that you can see a savory scone and a sweet scone. So we're gonna brush these with a little bit of whipping cream. You can brush them with whipping cream. You can use buttermilk. You can use regular milk. This is gonna help them brown up nice and pretty. So we're gonna get these brushed. And if you notice, I have a different brush for the sweet scones because I don't want to cross-contaminate. I don't want to use the same brush, even though I'm using whipping cream. I don't want to use the same brush on the different scones because if somebody is allergic to green onions, this brush is touching green onions. And so if I were to use it to brush these scones, I would cross-contaminate it and somebody could get really, really sick. So okay, I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of black pepper on top of each scone. This is kind of more of a garnish than anything, just to give them a little bit of color. You could top them with some parsley if you want to, but I'm gonna use some black pepper. And then for our banana scones, I'm gonna top them with a little bit of Turbinado Cane Sugar. Then we'll get these in the oven. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our scones are out of the oven. We've got our savory scones filled with bacon, green onions, mozzarella cheese, Parmesan cheese, and then we have our sweet scones that are filled with bananas, topped with a little bit of Turbinado Cane Sugar, and I added a little bit of granulated sugar as well. This is a fantastic recipe. It is quick, it is easy, not a lot of ingredients, and the great thing about it is that the dough freezes really well. So you don't have to bake off all the scones at one time. You can bake off a couple and freeze the rest and take them out as you need them. But this is how we do it at Sandy's house. I want to thank you all for joining us. I know you miss Aunt B. She will be back. I miss her too. And let me leave you this before we close. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord protect you. May the Lord shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace as only he can. Thank you. Make it breezy, and we will see you next time. And look how tender that is. Not dry at all. This is going to be great, great, great. With some jam or something like that would be fantastic with this scone.